So in this topic, we will cover the integration options that are available with Apex programming. We'll look at both the outbound and the inbound integration. The outbound integration is like when we want to connect with external HTTP or external endpoint, and inbound will be like we expose a web service or a REST API. Okay, so we'll see all of that right now. Now in the outbound integration, let's look at a scenario. What happens is typically you would be having a system in Salesforce, say the order management, whereas the other system might be in, say the other system will be the inventory management system. Say this is the inventory management system, and this one, whenever you make a change in the order management in Salesforce, in Sales Cloud, you need to check so you will be checking the integrity inventory in the, basically you will be checking for the inventory availability in the third-party inventory management system. So this would be an external system. This would not be a Salesforce system. So this third party could expose the data as HTTP endpoint, like say Oracle Apps and get inventory. Okay, so what you're going to basically do is, this could be they have exposed their service here, and you whenever an order is given, what you need to do is you have to go there and you'll have to make a call to this one and get the data back. So you'll get the inventory data from here, or you'll just pass the product ID, and imagine the scenario that you're passing the product ID to the third party and you're checking the inventory. Check the inventory in the third party. So it will return, the third party will return to you the values of the inventory, like currently how much is available, how much is not. So what will happen is this is exposed via HTTP call. So Salesforce has to make a call to the external system. So that is the first kind of integration that we will see. So for that, couple of things you need to do is, first of all, you need to enable the remote site setting to first allow the URL to be accessible in Salesforce. Any external URL, you cannot just access that in Salesforce from Apex. You need to whitelist it. Basically, remote site setting will whitelist it for your, this is for a security setting. Okay, once you do that, now look at the typical HTTP call. You'll place it a public class, you'll create a method, and you got to create an HTTP object. This is similar to in Java or .NET. Then you create an HTTP request. Then in the request you set endpoint the URL, which will be your third party URL, and then you set the method that will be again specified by the third party, whether it's a get, post, patch, put. Also, one more thing that you need to keep in mind is this might even require authentication. Okay, this might require authentication parameters which they will give it to you in the form of a login password and some token. Okay, all that you have to pass and you will get the response. So the response again is a class object. What you do is you instantiate the HTTP class object and then call a static method send and pass this request object. Whatever results from the third party will come in the result.get body. Okay, so this is a basic outbound call. So basically how this will work is you will sit with the integration teams. It won't be in isolation. That Oracle Apps team or the XYZ SAP team will sit with you. They will say this is our endpoint, this is our URL, these are the login parameters, this is the data you can send us, and this is the data you will get back. So there will be a mutual agreement, and based on that you will go ahead and build this. So to see this in action, what we will do is we will first create the we'll go to a site, Heroku site called as animals. The HTTP Heroku, it's an open site. Just a minute. Now if I go here and let's take the full URL. So now this is a third party URL. If you see here, this contains some data over here. This is a free for testing purpose we can use this. and suppose you add that slash path2. Okay, so that isn't there. So you have to just a minute, I'll just show you here. So they have an endpoint, like it should be a valid endpoint. Part2 is not, whereas if you give animals, it's going to show you a list of animals. Yeah. So this way, what we can do is we can fetch this data. Okay. So this is the third party URL. We have to fetch this data. So now let's whitelist it first. First, let's do a remote site setting. So you have to go to setup in Salesforce and enable the third party URL in the remote site settings. So let's, if you create a new URL, what happens here is you can go here and say new remote site. Say remote. You give the URL. Right now, this protocol security is if you want HTTPS. So right now we will not disable it. We'll keep it, and then you have to activate it. So basically, this way, what happens is you create a remote site setting, and it will be active for you. Okay. So you have to put the core URL, the top URL, and then any endpoints will be under it. Okay. Create this. So now any calls from your Apex can go to this particular URL. Okay. So now how to use this and how to invoke this URL. Now let's understand this. So first and foremost, what you do, as I told you, you create an HTTP object, then a request object, then you have to set the endpoint, which is the animals. So now this one is going to do a get. This is going to return a JSON object. Now what you do here is, if at all it is successful, whenever we have a successful network call, it will return you 200. Then you can go for a proper processing. This means the network is valid, that URL is valid, and the Salesforce is able to connect to it via the remote site setting. Now the next thing is, what is happening is, this is just for this case. Your external data could be in JSON or in XML. Mostly JSON format is what is used. So what you do here is, we just JSON deserialize it, untype it. It is serialized in the response.get body, and then we store it into a list of string and objects. Okay. So if you see here, the first one in the URL, the remote URL is actually, so this will break up into animal. It will be like an and then we'll have a values within that. So for that, the code here, what it has to do is, it basically gets the data back, the animal and the values, and the objects are now thrown into a results.get animals. Within this, what we do is, we get the list of in that map. What we do is, we get the list of animals from the map. It returns as a string and object. Yeah. So when we go to that map, when we get the result, we store it as a list object. We typecast it as a list object and store it in animals. Okay. Now S object, this is just an object. This is not an S object. Okay. You can have an object variable type list also in Apex. So this is just a JavaScript object. So now you just have to loop through the values in this. So let me explain. Map of string and object, what it returns is, it's going to return string and object. Okay. This is a JavaScript object. Then in the next line, what it is doing is, it's saying I am results.get map.get the animals. So map.get animals, what it will do, we'll get all of this majestic badger, all of that into a list. That's all you're doing, and then you loop through the list. So it's pretty simple. First you get a map, it's in the form of a map, then you loop through the list. You can also have a normal object data. So the main part here is to do the call out and get the return. So this can be stored in your third party URL in any format. This need not always be first in a map and in a list object. It could be a simple JSON format which your teams can agree upon. Okay. So right now let us see how this works. So go ahead and now first of all create a remote site setting and enable this URL here, and then you'll have to create this class. So go to developer console now, and now create a new Apex class, call it like HTTP callout. For this, what we'll do is, we will just copy the methods here. You can just copy it, you can type it from the screen or call it HTTP callout, just replace the name here. Alright, you don't need to replace it. Public, so you have two methods, make, get, callout. You have one method, so in this you specify HTTP new HTTP request. See, now these are templated. Now you don't need to type it all the time. Okay, some of this code in Salesforce you can reuse it directly. You can find these kind of code samples in Salesforce itself. So we are going to say HTTP new, HTTP request, do a get here, and now it's going to send. If it is successful, it's going to give us this, and then go through all of this. Now you know how to call this, right? So static method. So you go to anonymous block, and you will say system dot or say HTTP callout dot make get callout. So you just need to call the method, yeah. HTTP callout. So when you execute, it's going to load all the logs and all that, and it's going to get the data back to us. So let's look at the debug log. If you see here, it has returned the loop through the list of the map and returned as the majestic scary bear. Okay. This data which you have in the third party, first it returned as a map, and then you've gone through the JavaScript object and just returned it back. Okay, which is absolutely great. So please complete this. So if you have any authenticated endpoint, you can try it with that. All right. Similarly, the next thing that we can see here is, this is a simple way to call the data. You can also post data. Now to the same endpoint, Heroku also allows us to post data for the same endpoint. So right, like say Mighty Moose, let's go back here and see what the data is. Majestic Badger, for Fluffy Bunny, Scary Bear and Chicken, right? So that's the thing. So but again, it gives you a mock call out to post data. First was for get the data, second is to post data. You can also post the data. So what do you do here? Again, it's a same HTTP call request endpoint. Only thing that changes, pay attention here, is the post. And then you set the header. What is the content type that you're sending here? You'll have to give this JSON character set. So this is the content type. This is you have to hard code this. And then what you're doing is you're just set body. You're just setting the value of that name. You're adding a name, Mighty Moose. Okay. So and then HTTP response. So in this, what we do here is right now it is a post over here. So you copy the method over here and HTTP request. You set the endpoint, you set the method, and basically now the difference here is you have to set a JSON object. You're creating a JSON object name and Mighty Moose, and you're passing it. Okay, so this will get added to those object values. You're passing it in the form of a map only, key map value. And if it is successful, it will come here. Otherwise, it will give you an error message. So let's see and let's do a call out of this. So there isn't much to the HTTP part basically in callout. You need to know like what is the endpoint. You need to know what is the data you need to pass, in what format JSON you need to pass, what are the properties. That is all there is in the integration callout. There isn't. Salesforce has kept it pretty simple. Like so this callout is basically HTTP request. You have the post and the get. So now let's see what's happening here. Let me say make post callout. I can use the same thing and just say post. Let's execute the highlight. Now this is a mock call, okay? Now this will not go over here and actually update this. See here there are 4 values. It will keep value. This is a mock call, okay? They have set it up for you for our usage. So now when it comes back, it shows us that Mighty Moose has been added. So typically what has happened in the real time, you will be able to do it in and save, okay? But actually if you go to the site, you will not see, because there's a mock call. This is just to understand like how we do it. So this is typically how you use integration HTTP callouts, okay? So please complete both of this, and if you have any other endpoint, please try to use it and call it. Okay.